Infirmary Media. Hello, and welcome to the Selling Out Show. We've got a great one planned for you today. We're going to talk about movies. Yes, some retro classics that brings joy to our hearts and some other fun stuff over the course of this episode. I am one of your hosts, David Schultz, and by my side is my good friend and partner in crime, Nate Gorzinski. Nate, how the heck are you?
Not bad, man. It's, the Halloween festivities are finally over.
Oh yeah, it's done.
Kids went trick-or-treating actually last night to reveal when we're recording this.
Don't do that. Don't lift the veil.
We've been exposed to like the Wizard in Wizard of Oz. It's all an illusion, folks. This is not live.
Well,
but anyway, I'm doing all right.
Good. I was going to say, since the curtain has been moved, I had chocolate for breakfast.
Ooh.
And I'm not ashamed of it. I don't care. I raided my kid's pail, his little pumpkin there for the candy. Even when I check the candy for razor blades, I'm like a mafioso guy. I take my cut. You know what I mean? These Butterfingers belong to me. Yeah, it's a tax. Exactly. So, hey, I'm glad everybody's safe and sound after Halloween. Is anybody pregnant?
Ugh. Werewolf babies.
Ugh. But hey, Halloween is a great time for kids, and since it's long gone, I want to talk about something else relating to kids, my inner child, Nate. I have one.
Yeah?
I do. And I've recently brought it a whole bunch of joy.
Excellent. You got to treat him right, man. Don't abuse the inner child.
I try not to. But listen, there was a movie from the 80s that when I was a young whippersnapper, I wore the VHS cassette out in my house.
Okay.
Now, normally, you would think he wore out the tape, it's going to be a porn. But it wasn't. It truly wasn't. It was a little movie called Howard the Duck. Do you remember that ditty?
Do I remember Howard the Duck? Absolutely, man. It's a classic.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you remember because we're men of a certain age.
Right.
But there's a lot of kids out there, they probably have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. Howard the Duck, what the hell is that?
Yeah,
but this is a flick that came out in 86. It's actually famous because it's one of the biggest flops of all time.
That and like Waterworld.
Oh, God. And I liked Waterworld, too.
Yeah, hey.
The original. I just made up a sequel. Waterworld 2. No, it never happened.
2. Yeah.
No, but I really enjoyed Howard the Duck, and as a kid, you like it for some of the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And I think those wrong reasons are the reason, I get a nickel for every time I say that, it failed.
Okay. Explain.
There's a fine line that they kind of toyed with between adult themes and kid stuff.
Right.
Now, if you remember the film, there's some duck titties.
That's right.
There's some female and fowl sexual tension.
You think I might find happiness in the animal kingdom, Ducky?
Like they say, Dal. Love's strange. We could always give it a try.
Oh, yeah.
There's even a scene in a bathhouse, which, of course, appeals to the more adult or raunchy side. So you think, okay, this is not safe for kids, even though it's rated PG.
Right.
Also, the other thing is, when you're going to market something to kids, you want them soft and cuddly and friendly looking. Howard the Duck had fucking fingernails.
Did he really? I don't
He
even think
did.
I realized that. Yeah.
Oh, it's fucking gross. And the other thing, this is going to blow your mind, and probably blow the mind of every listener that we have out there. I dare you, go on Google, compare a picture of the young Macaulay Culkin with Howard the Duck.
Oh, my goodness. I can already see it in my head. Wow.
Dude, it's unfucking canny.
Wow.
Macaulay Culkin is Howard the Duck.
Wow, man.
Look at those eyes.
Yeah. It's like... That just blew my mind, dude. I'm kind of speechless right now. That's bizarre.
I did. Drop in the mic. Boom. There you go. Yeah. I did. Show is over. Thank you all for coming. See you next time out. But listen, that's why I think it failed. Where it succeeded is, even from the opening sequence where they are on the Duck Planet, Duck World.
Yeah.
They have a lot of spoofy stuff going on that reminded me almost like a Mad Magazine. Movie spoofs and even the TV commercials. And that kind of stuff, as a kid, sucked me in right away. And even now, as an adult, I find very humorous.
I'm always down for a duck pun or whatever, some world building that incorporates, cheesy puns and switching titles around. And yeah, like whatever, what was it? Play Duck, the magazine, the nudie duck magazine. And yeah, dude, the 80s were weird like that. A PG movie could have tits in it. It was strange. Yeah. There were a lot of PG movies that I remember going to and seeing nudity. And that was just kind of normal. Well, but then again, PG stands for parental guidance. So it's not G. G is general audiences.
Right.
It's for everyone. So technically PG is not necessarily for little kids and everyone. PG gets this reputation as being the watered down, accessible for everyone, little kids can go see it movie, but parental guidance means guide your freaking kids, man.
It does, but now PG is the new G.
Right.
You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Every Pixar movie or animated flick, it's hard to find a G-rated film that's safe. And even then, as a parent of a 7-year-old, a lot of times they reference death or murder and stuff. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I thought this was, G. No, it's more like gee whiz, what the hell's going on here? Earlier you said cheesy, and I love that word cheesy because this movie was full of cheesy dialogue. Yeah. But as well, it also had a good amount of action, adventure, and it was released by Universal, so I suppose true to the whole Universal Pictures classic monsters.
Right.
There was a lot of that great horror stuff going on in this film.
Right.
And that was due not even to the special effects, practical or otherwise, but to the great acting of a Mr. Jeffrey Jones.
Right, the convicted pedophile Jeffrey Jones.
It's so fucked up you said that because I could have swore he was busted for diddling.
Yeah.
He was, wasn't he?
Well, it was like child porn or something. I don't know if he was convicted of actually physically touching a kid or just possessing child pornography or something.
Either way.
But something shady, something nasty.
Which is a fucking shame. The decade of the 80s must have been amazing for him.
Yeah.
Out of sight. I mean, he was in Howard the Duck. He was in Beetlejuice. He was in Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
He was in Amadeus. He was all over the place. And he
was in The Devil's Advocate in the early 90s.
Yeah, there you go. Whoa, I love that fucking movie too.
Me too.
But I mean, seriously, the world was his fucking oyster in the 80s. A great character actor. He was outstanding in Howard the Duck. People forget about that. And that's why I brought it up, is because when you think, there's a fucking a puppet or a little person in a suit, that's so fucking cheesy, especially compared to what we have now.
Right.
The acting chops and the duality that he performed in this film was truly something special. And in a different era, he would have been really celebrated for it among some of the greats.
Sure. Like the Lon Chaney's and the Boris Karloff's even. He was creepy. He played that galactic overlord or whatever, the scientist being slowly overtaken by this monster in Howard the Duck, and he really he pulled it off, man.
Wait, the end of the world is coming, and I will be the cause of it.
Also, something that should not be forgotten or left in the dust is that Leah Thompson,
she was a smoke show.
Oh my God, not only was she a great actress and she was in some fantastic films, but yeah, she was a stone cold fox, baby.
Oh my goodness. I used to have such a crush on Leah Thompson when I was a kid, man. Specifically, I think it started with Howard the Duck.
Really?
And something about that crimped hair, like when she was performing on stage, like pretending to play the guitar and, singing that Howard the Duck. That song, that was, man. Something about her rocking out up there with the crimped hair and the little short mini skirt. She was pretty damn hot, man.
You got that right. And I believe she was playing the guitar. She was training for that movie. She had to learn how to sing and do all this stuff to be in that band, Cherry Bomb.
Really? What? I could tell it was her voice singing, I think.
Yes.
But she really played guitar on it too?
I believe she did. I mean, we're going to have to check the tape on that.
Yeah,
we will.
Yeah,
but if I remember correctly, she trained fucking night and day, weekends, the whole 9 yards to fucking be fully immersed in the whole rock star role.
That is commendable, Leah.
The other thing is, it's amazing to me that you said she was a crush of yours back then, because I didn't really truly appreciate her in that aspect until basically now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, hey. You know, I still see it. I'm at this age and I'm with you now, but I was there from the beginning, bro. I was an old Leah Thompson freak.
Freak.
I wasn't as into her in the Back to the Future movies just because she was something about that 50s
plain Jane
style. Yeah, she was a little more plain, but that 80s style, man, I used to love that shit with the heavy makeup and crimped hair and mini skirts and ripped up fashion. I loved all that shit, man.
You've mentioned crimped hair 3 times now, so I think there's something really going on there.
I think I have a crimped hair fetish.
That's it, man. And
I crimp my pubic hair just for kicks at home.
Whoa! So. Whoa! Too much information there, Kemosabe.
Must be mating season.
Creepy little dude.
But maybe it's because I saw Back to the Future first.
Uh-huh.
That kind of turned me away from that whatever crimped hair fetish that you have, lifelong fetish. But yeah, she truly isn't appreciated for the beauty that she was, the great talent that she is, because, I mean, even now, she's still fucking hot. You know, it's just, she's amazing.
Woman. Yeah. She had continued success. She went on, she did, what was their show, Caroline in the City or something she did years later.
Right.
And yeah, she was still attractive and good for her. You go, Leah Thompson.
Leah Thompson was my Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, man.
It took me a while to appreciate it, but now I do. I'm getting my full my vitamin T, vitamin
Excellent.
Thompson.
Yeah.
Getting that going and fucking, ooh, yeah, baby.
Yeah.
Now, the whole thing about this movie, too, is I hadn't seen it in about 20 years.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I was walking through Walmart, grabbing my milk and my eggs, domesticated dad, la-di-da-di-da, and I saw it on like top of one of those $5 bins, and I fucking dropped my eggs. They fell in slow motion. I dropped the milk. The world turned black and white, and I reached out and grabbed it, and I floated to the register.
Ooh.
And then I walked out without paying for it. But anyway, I'm kidding. But the great thing is that I immediately put it on the moment I got home. I'm like, everybody leave me alone. I want to watch Howard the Duck. It was my favorite movie as a kid.
Yeah.
And it was just like muscle memory, even though it had been so long. I was reciting lines from the movie as it were happening, just like I'd seen it yesterday.
Wow, man. It's like information in your brain you didn't know you had until it popped up again. Like you said, muscle memory. It's like Jason Bourne or something where somebody attacks him and he just automatically starts fighting back. It's you put on this movie and you're Jason Bourning your way through the dialogue.
Well, it's like downloading it into my brain. I swear to you, I must have watched it like 150 times when I was a kid. And I didn't get to see it right in 86.
Right, okay.
I didn't see it in the theaters. And when I was a kid, we were poor. And so we didn't have many VHS movies in my house. So if you had one, you watched the fucking hell out of it.
Right.
You know, or you tape something off TV or whatever the case may be here. But But you get my drift. It wasn't like we had a fucking wide supply of movies to choose from.
Absolutely, man.
It was like Howard the Duck or fucking, I think that might have been it. I don't know. Maybe I had like Star Wars or something until the next one got bought or whatever. So it was a fucking big deal then. And now, as I mentioned in the onset of this whole thing, I feel like a kid again. My inner child is fucking doing a tap dance on my old face going, ha, you old son of a bitch, I'm back.
That's great.
I'm back, baby.
I'm so glad. I think that it's interesting you brought that up about the muscle memory and knowing all the lines and not realizing it, because I remember another movie that happened to me with. If you remember years ago, just a quick aside here.
Sure.
Years ago, you used to own the movie Mystery Men with Ben Stiller.
Yeah.
And it's about the ragtag group of fake superheroes, kind of. Paul Rubens is in it, William H. Macy, and Dane Cook has a little cameo in it briefly.
Fucking Dane Cook. What happened to that piece of shit?
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Still, Mystery Men, great movie.
Sure. But I knew we had watched it quite a bit when you owned it, because it was another one of those scenarios where, you know, you're living in a certain apartment. I was crashing at your place for a while, and I don't think there was cable, so the same thing you were talking about when you were a kid. There were only a certain number of videos to watch. So I think I watched Mystery Men probably 100 times during that period. And some years later, I've forgotten all about it. And if you asked me, I probably couldn't even told you the plot of the movie other than the basic broad strokes. But it was on one day. I put the movie on, and God damn it if I didn't know every line to that fucking movie, and it just popped out of my head. It was so bizarre, man.
They must have ripped the Q section out of my dictionary, because I don't know the meaning of the word quit.
But yeah, so that shit does happen. It's really, really strange. Lost Boys was, I think I mentioned on our Halloween episode last time around, was one of those movies where I could recite every line and piss people off. But that one, I don't think that's ever left me. I've always known that I have that skill inside me. Mystery Men was the hidden talent.
Yeah, exactly. It's like with Lost Boys, you might be walking around the house doing some random activity and blurt out a line.
Right.
Mystery Men, you needed to see it.
Yes.
To kind of shock you. Yeah, exactly, like a trauma. From your youth, exactly. But
oh man,
it was like this, man. When the moment that the scene came on, in Howard the Duck in Joe Roma's Cajun sushi, I was like, I'm home. I belong here. This is where I'm supposed to. And that's an amazing fucking scene, by the way.
Sure.
I don't know if you recall that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Jennings just fucking going cuckoo and
all
the hillbillies fucking grabbing Howard and they're about to fucking cook him up. I mean, that's another wonderful thing too is when I mentioned earlier, this really is such an 80s film. Mm-hmm. The music is fucking 80s. It's fantastic.
Sure.
The clothing, the style, the stereotypes, everything just sucks you back into that era.
Yeah.
And I fucking love it.
I do too, man. And let's not forget Tim Robbins was in that. That was one of Tim Robbins' early movies, and I didn't even realize it was him. When I was a kid, I couldn't have told you who Tim Robbins was when I first saw that movie. And if you had asked me who plays Howard the Duck's scientist companion in the movie years later, if you had asked me, if you'd quizzed me on it, I wouldn't have been able to tell you who it was. I was so surprised. I happened to see Howard the Duck a couple years back, more recently than you had, apparently. And I was so taken aback. I'm like, holy shit, that's Tim Robbins. And I didn't even know. I mean, he's great in it. He's a great bumbling sidekick.
Goofy. Really goofy,
Comic relief in a comedy movie, so.
It is comedy, a lot with the one-liners and that are really great and everything, but I mean, it does have a lot of elements in it.
Sure. It's an adventure, sci-fi, it's all that stuff.
Car chases. They have a scene where they're in a ultralight, the little airplane there.
Yes.
Fleeing. I mean, there's so much great shit going on there. Again, I mentioned a little bit of horror, the monster stuff. So yeah, I guess it's easy to say, it's a comedy.
Yeah.
And in many ways it is. It's just got a lot to digest, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, man, they throw a lot at you in the Howard the Duck movie.
You know Quack Fu?
Yeah, it's deadly. It's deadly, man.
That's it. No more Mr. Nice Duck. Huh? Let the female creature go. Every duck's got his limit, and you scum have pushed me over the line.
Jimmy, do you like to see what I see? A talking duck?
Yeah, that's it. I've been doing too much toot.
Shoot! Fly away!
No one laughs at a master of quack fu.
Now, Howard the Duck, I'm surprised in a way that with this culture of nostalgia and bringing back familiar properties and characters, we haven't seen a new Howard the Duck movie. And with the exception of at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy in the post-credit scene or whatever, there's a little Howard the Duck cameo, but it's more of a tie-in to his... Because Howard the Duck was a Marvel Comics character years ago.
Yes.
So it's actually more... It doesn't look like the Howard the Duck from the old movie. It's more like the comic book character version of him. But anyway, that was a little teaser, and it got a lot of people talking about, are we going to see Howard the Duck tied into this whole Marvel franchise, or are we going to see more like a new Howard the Duck movie? And as tempted as I am to say, wow, that would be cool to remake Howard the Duck or make a sequel to Howard the Duck, I am so burned by now that I don't want it to happen. I'm happy rewatching the old one, and I can go back and enjoy that, because recently I've been burned by a few, well, actually, it's these specific titles that really bother me. I've seen a specific titles.
You do look singed. So
yeah,
what hurt you? Show me on the doll, Nate. Where did they hurt you?
Dude, look at these scars, man. I got the 2nd-degree burns, man. I need grafts.
Yeah.
But recently I saw a whole handful of them, and a few of them were great. I saw the new Joker movie, which isn't really a retread. It's like a new version of an old story. But it's an existing character and a new take on him that a lot of us didn't think we needed after having so many Jokers. The Heath Ledger one, and the Jack Nicholson one, and the Jared Leto piece of shit, and whatever. But that was a great movie, in my opinion. And then I saw the most recent remake of Halloween that came out last year, the Michael Myers franchise, which that one's crazy. That's like Spider-Man. Because Spider-Man, if you remember, had Sam Raimi brought Spider-Man in, then with Tobey Maguire playing him. Then, for some reason, they're like, we need to rehash that again and put Andrew Garfield in. And now we've got Tom Holland playing. That's 3 different Spider-Man series or franchises.
Sure.
And the same thing happened with Michael Myers, bro. It was the original John Carpenter series and whatever happened with that over the 80s and until they had Busta Rhymes fighting Michael Myers in the 90s, which was ridiculous. But anyway, they had that. And then in 2007-ish, you had Rob Zombie remaking the Halloween movies, which people, you can take them or leave them. They were interesting, but a lot of people hated them. But now they revamped it again and put out a new Halloween last year. And again, that one was actually okay. And I know I'm rambling here, but what I wanted to get to is that you can't get away from this shit. And a lot of times they really ruin a franchise, and it's something, like I said, with Howard the Duck, where part of me is like, it'd be cool if they remade it, but I know they're just going to ruin another thing from my childhood, dude.
Well, they were talking about it. You know, when you mentioned the Guardians of the Galaxy thing,
yeah,
and how he looked more like the Steve Gerber from the comics,
right? Who
created Howard the Duck, more like that kind of representation of the character. Okay. There was talks about him having the TV series. Maybe Kevin Smith is attached. And as far as the sequel stuff, the movie Howard the Duck had a budget of $36 million.
Wow. Yeah.
When all was said and done around the fucking world, it only brought in $38 million. That's a lot of work in movie terms for fucking $2 million. Wow. Because the movie was executive produced by George Lucas.
George Lucas. I was going to bring that up. That's right.
Fucking huge. Industrial Light and Magic did the effects, the puppetry, the stop action stuff, everything.
Right. Yeah.
There was so much being put into this film. This was supposed to be a fucking blockbuster.
Right. But it was a big flop. Yeah.
It was a huge flop. And I'm surprised there wasn't like maybe a direct-to-video sequel a couple years later.
Yeah.
But you said it'd be ruined if they did it again now. I would like to see it like this.
Yeah.
And just give me 1 second to explain.
Sure, no, shoot, man.
We live in a day and age where it's okay to do a sequel 10 years after. Just recently, what is that movie? Zombieland.
Right.
You know, they waited whatever it was, a decade to come out with a sequel.
Yeah.
Well, let's take it even further. Come out with Howard the Duck 2.
Yep.
And base it on that first property.
Yeah.
Don't write something new. Everything that happened did in fact happen from the first movie in the universe.
Okay.
And keep going with it. I think the culture now would actually embrace something like that,
sure.
as goofy and ridiculous as it is, as being maybe hip, maybe cool, maybe funny.
Hey, man, they did it to frickin' Train Spotting. They made a new Train Spotting sequel recently, and that was frickin' 20 years later.
Exactly.
So, why not? But, dude, as far as ruining, you know, before I got off on my crazy tangent, as I always do.
Yes, you.
I wanted to explain why I'm so hesitant, and it's specifically two of my favorite properties growing up, franchises, whatever you want to call them, were Aliens and Predator.
Sure.
And both of those were everything a kid could want in the 80s. You know what I mean? They were awesome monsters. One had Arnold. The other, it's like you have Space Marines fighting aliens and aliens and whatever. And for years, we had all hoped for either a sequel or, oh my God, can you imagine if they even made an Aliens versus Predator movie? Because they had done that in comic books. Again, comics were, paving the way for movies, but we were hoping for it for years. And in Predator 2, back in the 90s, or whatever it was, 1990, when they released that, there was even an alien skull in the Predator's spaceship. So you were like, oh shit, like they're alluding to this other. So it got all the kids wound up.
Yeah, jacked up, sure.
And then years later, they make freaking the worst possible Aliens versus Predator movies. They're jokes. They're horrible. And what happens is you've got these great... I don't understand it. You've got these great ingredients and these characters where you can't go wrong, man. They already look cool. The mythos is already established even. You've already got it. But when it comes to put them in a new scenario and make a new script for them, they give it to some moron who's somebody that writes for the CW or some shit. It's like some awful... The newest Predator movie that came out last year, that it had Keegan-Michael Key from Key and Peele in it prominently, spouting out one-liners that were totally out of place. It was garbage. It was hot garbage. And the most recent Alien movies were Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and I'm not even going to get into those pieces of nonsense. Because I will. I'll take over this whole episode talking about it. But my point is, I don't want that to happen to Howard the Duck, because Aliens and Predator have basically been ruined in my eyes.
Like you said, when you were a kid, if someone had thrown that premise at you, Beach, you would have been like, holy cow, this has to happen. I need to see this.
Yeah.
But now,
Aliens versus Predator?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And, years removed, you're an adult now. You're a grown-up.
Yeah.
So do you think because you've matured, again, look at your inner child like I did with Howard the Duck. Do you think inner Nate would appreciate it more than adult Nate does now?
That's a good question, man. Because you can't separate yourself. It's hard to say because I'm not seeing it as a kid, but I'd like to think that, I don't know. I'd like to think that I still had some standards as a kid and
right. Yeah.
But
you didn't.
But because honestly, the newest Predator turns him into, it's like it turns it into some weird slasher movie. The Predator was a hunter. Again, I'm getting sucked into...
Yeah, you're making noises. You're getting so angry. You're like, I don't smash something. Let's do a new Hulk movie.
I'm getting
Break
primal. I'm turning into a predator of sorts.
So your main problem with the movie is it turns it into something it's not.
Yeah, the interesting thing, too, is that the most recent Predator, the one I'm complaining about, was written by Shane Black, who was an actor in the first Predator. He was there from the beginning. He played one of the Marines that got killed by the Predator in the first movie. And he went on to write Lethal Weapon movies. He did a ton of movies, Shane Black. And he's hit or miss, his films, but you would think he would have a little more sense of what a Predator movie should be, having been there from the beginning. But
respect the franchise, since he was in it.
This motherfucker. He shat all over it, my friend.
You just called him a motherfucker. I like that. You like this motherfucker.
The movie was so formulaic. Again, it's like a lot of our listeners, I'm sure, haven't seen it. You haven't seen it. So it makes no sense for me to go into this long criticism of all the scenes, of all the specific things I hated about it. But suffice it to say, it's a big pile of stinking garbage.
You would think it'd be someone who redoes a franchise, reboots it, revamps it, whatever you want to call it, would want to make it like a fanboy's wet dream.
Sure.
Throw in all the ingredients that worked, fucking ramp it up, put it into fucking overdrive to make the fans go into the theater, munch on their popcorn, leave and say, that was the most insane fucking thing I've ever seen. So to kind of mix the puzzle pieces around and throw in your artistic vision and stuff, I think that's a big problem that people or these creators do with the remakes.
Sure.
To begin with, like thinking I need to leave my own personal fingerprint on it. It's like, no, you don't.
Well,
You really don't. You know, whatever drives that movie, fucking crank it up, man. Just fucking push that to the limit and go with that.
Yeah, but again, that's strange too, because then if you see a movie that's just a complete retread, you're like, what was the point of them even making it? You walk this fine line where the movie has to remain true to the spirit of the original and at the same time be different enough to keep viewers interested and not just bore you and say we've seen it all before, but not completely just change everything. Like, without getting into another goddamn tangent, the Star Wars, Wars movies. You mentioned George Lucas, we were talking about.
Right.
That's another series they should have left it alone. In my whole youth, all my friends and I and my brother, we all used to say, I can't wait until maybe they'll make a new Star Wars someday. Maybe they'll make a new Star Wars. And when they have, like, every Star Wars movie that's come out has just disappointed me. And again, it's that question, would I have appreciated it as a kid? Are these movies for adults? And part of me is like, yeah, they kind of are, because the people that are most excited about them are the fans of the originals who are adults now. Because if you ask Joey, my girlfriend's kid, my stepson, he's like, he could take or leave Star Wars. He couldn't give a shit about it. He's just like, yeah, it's one of a million sci-fi movies that have come out. Like, he doesn't care. He doesn't get excited about it. He doesn't buy into the hype because he wasn't there for the original. So you can say, well, it's not made for grown-ups. The originals were kind of kids' movies, but it's like, but by now that franchise is kind of, it has its own audience, and
Well, Star Wars certainly does have legs.
Yeah.
I'll give it that. It's been, mildly successful.
Mildly.
Yeah, when I mentioned earlier about putting everything just into overdrive, and you're like, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
Because the original is good enough as is. I kind of thought about that after you said that in this split second here. And I'm like, well, the effects, right? I was talking about the effects of Howard the Duck earlier.
Yeah.
It's like, could you imagine now how good that would look? Because the creators, the filmmakers were so hampered by restraints.
Yeah.
Then, imagine if you saw it now in its full glory, if they had the potential to do what they wanted to do to begin with. But I totally hear what you're saying. It's like, I also wonder what remakes were good.
Right.
I know a lot of people bitched about RoboCop. I loved RoboCop as a kid. Who didn't?
Right. The original was classic. Yeah.
It was fucking classic. And I went to see the new one in the theater. I paid my fucking money, sat down. I didn't mind it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really didn't. Was it the best fucking thing I ever saw? Do I think it was the most true, reboot ever? No. But for what it was, if I can put it in a bubble, which you kind of have to do now with things, you have to accept that. Everything exists in a vacuum. Yeah. As much as you want to tie it into the past, they're just trying to make money. And I liked it for what it was.
Okay. I actually haven't seen it, so I don't know. I didn't even want to risk it. But
well, this is a great episode. We're just talking about movies that neither of us have seen.
Well,
except for Howard the Duck and Mystery Man. Those two,
right.
We've
check
established
the marks. That. Yeah, we know those.
Well, enough about movies, Nate, but I do want to leave you with this. On my planet, we never say die. We say kill.
Man's oldest fantasy. Across a sea of stars, look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's a duck.
Nate, a show like ours, we need friends. We need friends in all sorts of places, and we have some. So I want to thank our sponsors, Northland Vapor. I'm a vapor. I only use their products exclusively. I'm actually vaping on some Blue Raz right now, and there's a coupon code, Selling Out 19, which will save you 19% your entire order. So definitely check them out at northlandvapor.com. alpinehemp.com. The CBD revolution is here. I'm a huge fan of CBD. You are a huge fan of CBD.
That's right. I love it.
Can't get enough of it. Helps me sleep, helps me relax. And they got tons of products on their website. Again, The code is the same, selling out 19 to save 19%, and right now they're having a fall giveaway. So if you want some free CBD, make sure you check out alpinehemp.com. Last but not least, spunklube.com. I love Spunk Lube. I can't get enough of it. If I could be, I would be drenched in it right now, head to toe. Listen, a lot of people think, oh, that kind of stuff is for professionals in the adult film industry. No, it's for average Joes just like you and me and our wives. Sometimes things get boring. Sometimes things get stale. Have a little fun in the bedroom, and you can start by visiting our partner, Spunk Lube. Now, social media. All the kids are into it, right? They're doing this stuff clickety-clack on the computer. Like, I know what the hell that is. But if you want to find us, it's easy. Easy peasy lemon squeezy on Twitter, @SellingOutShow. On Facebook, @SellingOutShow1. We are now on the gram, as the kids would call that too, the Instagram. You can send us an email with your thoughts or suggestions, sellingoutshow@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts on the show, or even better, hit up iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Give us a good review. 5 stars would be the best, but we'll take what you got. If you like the show, if you don't like the show, let us know. We want to hear from you.
Dust off your LPs. It's time for Nate's Notes.
During the early days of this podcast, it seemed like we couldn't get through an episode without mentioning the California skate punk veterans NOFX. Our first episode contained a prototype of what would become Nate's Notes. I did a sort of review of a NOFX show I had just attended, and from there, it just seemed natural for me to work in some kind of music-related segment each episode. And for the first few episodes, NOFX found their way into at least a sentence or two. I've done my little essays on all kinds of subjects, but music is the thread that runs through all of them, making it all seem at least somewhat cohesive. I've done bits on individual artists, discussed genres or musical trends. I've thrown in stuff from my own musical history, such as it is, and I've delved into artists' habits, criminal records, etc. I've never really had much trouble thinking of something music-related to write about, but I was having a bit of trouble deciding on a topic this past few weeks. I guess after 30-some-odd little essays, I can forgive my muse for not always showing up on time. So one day, I'm listening to Pandora or some app, and this NOFX song comes on. It's called It Ain't Lonely at the Bottom, and it sounds like this.
I look around me, so many things to do, there's so many things to see, I'm looking up at the upper prestige, I know the pity me, because I do what I please. It may be lonely at the top, but for those of us who couldn't stop, we've got 100 dozen friends.
Definitely not one of their best songs, not one of my favorites by them, but I was struck by the message. In It Ain't Lonely at the Bottom, singer, bassist, and songwriter Fat Mike Burkett is clearly twisting the "it's lonely at the top" cliche, and he's basically saying that he's hit bottom. He's a drunk, drugged-up mess, and you know what? He's okay with being there. There are always lots of other fuck-ups to keep him company, hence the title. What inspired me about this song, mediocre as it really is when compared to the rest of their catalog, is that Fat Mike, charismatic as he may be, in that snarky punk rock way, seemed to have no idea what the fuck he was talking about. See, NOFX makes a lot of jokes about drug use, which is fine, and totally their right. I find a lot of it hilarious myself, and can definitely relate to the sentiment for the most part. But if you know anything about the band, it's all just kinda interesting. I'm sure I've mentioned before that Fat Mike didn't really use drugs for the first half of his life, and early on, he made his drummer kick heroin in order to stay in the band, which was a solid move, don't get me wrong. And said drummer is still clean and sober to this day, some 30 years later. So right on. Again, this is stuff I've mentioned before, but somewhere in his 30s, Fat Mike decides to catch up on all the partying he'd thus far missed out on. And things have since gotten so bad that he's simply unreliable on stage for the most part, and he looks rougher and rougher every tour cycle. Fat Mike has always been a pretty enterprising dude. On top of bringing his band to unexpected popularity and success, he also started a respectable record label back in the 90s called Fat Records. He happened to catch the 90s skate punk wave just right, where his band had been around long enough to have some credibility and status. And then he just signed a ton of young punk bands to his label, further boosting not just his credibility in the scene, but his financial status as well. And this was when record labels could still make lots of money, pre-file sharing and streaming. Mike made a lot of smart moves, and has remained pretty damn wealthy. He's had personal issues, as we all do, having a few divorces, and of course his substance abuse issues, but he's still a damn successful guy. Which is what makes me do a double take when he sings about not being lonely at the bottom. I mean, yes, we all have our personal bottoms. That low point where you say, this is as bad as it can get, and I have to either start climbing out or just hang it up. Everyone's bottom is different. One guy may lose his job and sober up. Another guy ends up homeless and diseased. And look, I know that this is ridiculous to go on about. Fat Mike does a lot of things to provoke a reaction. Hell, he got his band blacklisted from the whole USA a couple years ago when he made a joke on stage about the Las Vegas shooter. His words aren't always to be taken super seriously, but coming from my point of view, it's just weird to have watched the guy from afar as a fan over the years and seen how ragged and rough the dude has gotten. It's not the normal trajectory where someone either burns out young or they get older and clean up. He wrote that song about hitting bottom a couple years back, and hopefully that's as low as things will get for him. Still putting out music and touring, still a millionaire living in the punk rock world. It's not good to compare these things, but I wish I had his bottom, so to speak, because I know there's always a dude with a shovel just when I think I've reached my own. Shit, most people would have to climb for years to reach his bottom. But honestly, drug dependence sucks no matter what. And emotional and psychological bottoms exist too. So even though Fat Mike may seem like he's got nothing to complain about, I know that we all have our problems. And honestly, the last thing I want to see is for anyone to hit new lows. We've seen a lot of our entertainers die from this stupid disease of addiction, and I guess I just don't want to see Fat Mike become another statistic just because he kept such a cavalier attitude towards his problem. And shit, even if he doesn't die, I'm living proof that eventually you will hit a bottom where it really is fucking lonely. So get your shit together, Mike.
There's a lot of talk about bottoms. There's a lot of tushy shaking. Oh wait, you're not talking about that kind of bottom.
Well,
hitting rock bottom is more like it.
I don't envy Fat Mike's bottom,
No,
like I said.
no.
But yeah, man, we all hit some low spots. Anyone who's I feel like everyone's hit low spots. Every human being can look at some point in their life and say, "Wow, that's as low as shit has gotten." And yeah, maybe it's just I broke up with my girlfriend or whatever it is for some people that live a normal life. But for some of us, it's crazy. And if you're the type of person where you have a lot of enablers and you have the money to keep it up, your bottom, it can keep going. But yeah, anyway, let's make this more fun and just compare bottoms instead.
Yeah,
compare,
that sounds like
booties.
a hootenanny right there.
Yeah.
You know, here's the thing, Nate. You brought up an interesting point.
Okay.
It's one thing to hit your bottom due to life circumstances or whatever's happened to you, but it's another thing to look for that, to actively seek that out.
Yeah.
Which seems like this was Mike's case. Like, he wanted it. He yearned for it.
I see what you're saying. Like, he glamorized. He's at that point where a lot of us are when we're teenagers, where we're like, oh, look at me, I'm getting fucked up. And you're almost like, you used to read your Charles Bukowski, and I used to read my Jerry Stahl and William S. Burroughs, and it was so cool to think about how glamorous it can be to be this addict or alcoholic. And Fat Mike is there and sings about it like he thinks it's cool. So yeah, he's kind of seeking out a bottom, and he's tempting fate, goddammit. And I'm just saying, I've seen that story end badly a lot of times. So even though I don't know the guy, it is what it is. It
is a maturity thing, like you said. You know, when we were younger, that kind of stuff looks appealing to you, that lifestyle, because it's glamorized. It seems like the way that life should be. You know, fast sex, fast drugs, fast whatever, fast bottoms. Shake it, baby, shake it. But you know,
a lot of sex was fast when we were kids, though.
We wore.
Before you knew what you were doing,
we wore those tapes out. But yeah, totally, man. Fucking. It seems like now, when you're older, you're like, oh, I think you appreciate more getting through that and being able to enjoy life.
Sure.
And I wouldn't see a point in anybody's life where it becomes a thing where you want that later. Like, oh, I missed that phase of my life. I got to do that now.
Yeah, man.
No, you don't.
But, you know, if we worried about every person that's dabbling in substances, then he's just a person that I listen to, and I happen to know he's a little famous, so his shit is out there for us to see. And I happen to notice him getting grosser and grosser looking every time I see him, and more ragged and out of shape. So it's hard to ignore at this point. It's almost getting painful to see it happening. So
always is, baby. Always is. So. But you know, there is something that we can do, something that we have power over. We actually kind of hoard it, the control. And that's this show. And right now it's coming to an end. The party's over. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. What you can do is go hit our back catalog, which is chock full of goodies, topics, subjects, a whole bunch of podcast goodies you can put right into your ear holes. But as for this one, it's over. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in and listening. We truly appreciate it. Virtual hugs for all of you. I am Dave. That is Nate. And this has been Selling Out.
Peace.
Infirmary Media.